What is the experience of learning to bark like a dog in front of a boy you like? I was so embarrassed that I just wanted to find a crack in the ground. In the second vocal class, I became the lucky one that the teacher admired. I thought he was like other students, deliberately making things difficult for me because of my family history. Yes, I was born into a family with hearing loss and grew up in a silent world. Sign language is my first language. My name is Ruby, and I have been the mouth and ears of my family for as long as I can remember. When the alarm went off at 3 in the morning and the town was still asleep, I was already on my family's not-so-big fishing boat, sailing out into the deep sea with my dad and brother. The salty sea air on deck rolls in with the smell of fish, and the roar of the diesel engine shakes the cabin. But my family couldn't hear it all. They live in eternal silence. I was the only one who could hear the noisy announcements on the radio, and I became the family's only link to the outside world. Dad would bring the boat into the harbor, and it was up to me to speak at the top of my lungs to communicate with the dispatcher about the berth. When I sold fish, the fishmongers always looked at me with sympathetic eyes and gestured in sign language, deliberately raising their voices when they lowered the price, as if deaf people should be squeezed. The most embarrassing part was having to accompany my dad to the doctor's office. After all that, I couldn't even change out of my fish-smelling clothes before I had to run to school, exhaustion making my eyelids fight in class. The smell always elicits snickers and nose-covering gestures. Low self-esteem kept me cowering in a corner. I was used to silence, until the day I chose my classes. To be near Miles, the boy I had a crush on, I ghosted into the choir. The mere fact that my name was behind his on the sign-up sheet made my heart beat like it was going to crash out of my chest. The first rehearsal was a death sentence for me. Mr. V asked everyone to show off their voices one by one. Those in front sang confidently, like larks. My turn, my throat felt like it was clogged with seawater. The blood rushed to my head, and all that was left in my ears was my own huge heartbeat and the faint sound of jeering. I fled, like a shameful coward, until the choking sensation receded a little.
Happy birthday to you.
Later in class, I hid myself in the shadows of the last row, praying that Mr. V wouldn't look over again. But he saw me anyway. Gosh, it was torture to ask me to pant like a dog in front of the entire choir. I closed my eyes and gave in, making an incredibly humiliating noise. Then he asked me to try to vocalize. Strangely enough, my throat, previously tight as a string, loosened up a bit.
It's not sand and glue.
I slowly understood Mr. V's strictness. Practice was painful, but singing became my only breathing hole. Mr. V was persistent. Not only did he let me stay, he went so far as to pair me with Miles in a duet, right at the final exam concert. But this ecstasy was like a bubble that burst in an instant. As soon as I returned to the home that was littered with fishing nets and smelled of fish. The family has been in a sad state lately. The asshole company that monopolizes the fish market has pushed the purchase price lower and lower. I witnessed my brother negotiating at the pier, clearly giving someone 3 yuan, but handing Leo only 275 yuan. Heartbroken, I rushed up to argue with the other man, but Leo violently pushed me away. His face was one of hurt, anger, and intense pride. It was only in the music, in the moments when I met Miles's eyes, that I could briefly forget the heaviness. After class, Mr. V asks me what singing means to me. I froze. It was a raging and vague feeling, words too barren. Almost instinctively, I raised my hand and used my most familiar and primitive form of expression. Mr. V looked at me steadily, his eyes red. He even suggested a name that made my heart stop, Berklee College of Music. He was willing to tutor me for free. This was a life I hadn't even thought about before. It was almost as if I had summoned up the greatest courage of my life and cautiously tried my hand at the dinner table. Mom's hand with the knife and fork paused, confusion and disbelief on her face. How could she possibly understand? From the moment she was born, her world has been a silent painting. To her, sound is just an empty concept, like colors for someone born blind. Until that day, I brought Miles home to rehearse. As we practiced back to back, Miles's voice flowed over my spine like a warm current, and before I knew it, I was humming along to the melody. Just as I was singing with full emotion, my parents' voices suddenly came from outside the door. It seems they still haven't moved on. They actually assumed Miles was my boyfriend. Miles's expression shifted from shock to suppressed laughter, and I wished I could jump into the sea and drown. To make things worse, the incident became a laughingstock for the entire school. Miles chased after me to explain, but as I looked at his flushed face, I suddenly realized he was no different from those classmates who mocked me. I hid by the old rock by the lake, singing and burying myself in music. Teacher Way's place became my refuge. With every breath, every vocalization, it felt like I was fighting back against the ever-present ridicule.
That's what I was waiting for.
But home never lets me stay at peace for long. Our family's fishing boat, the very thing we depended on for survival, was being squeezed to the brink by those greedy corporations. Dad and Leo were fired up, determined to go independent and resist.
Suck my dick.
But what was reality? How could they possibly negotiate, trade, or communicate in this world full of hearing people? Yes, I'm the only hearing person. Ruby Rossi, this family's ears and mouth. Fishing the docks, finding buyers, signing contracts, renting cold storage, endless phone calls, mountains of paperwork, and teacher ways classes. I feel like I'm being torn apart, like a ragged doll being pulled in countless directions at once. After being late 3 times, the look in Teacher Way's eyes made me want to sink through the floor.
If you waste my time, I will not work with you.
The 4th time, Mom still expected me to stay without question, to handle the TV interview. When I was shut outside, his words, piercing and clear, still reached me through the cold door.
I certainly don't need a lesson in failure from someone who's too afraid to even try.
Resentment, pressure, the agony of being misunderstood, it all came crashing down in an unstoppable flood. Why can't I live for myself just once?
I can't stay with you for the rest of my life.
When Miles' message came through, that thought crystallized into resolve. That was the first time I didn't show up for the fishing boat. And in those few hours I chose to live for myself, a deliberate disaster struck. The Coast Guard hailed Dad's boat, but no one responded. It wasn't until they boarded by force that Dad and my brother realized what was happening. The consequences? A revoked license and a fine that might as well have been a death sentence for us. Guilt and frustration nearly crushed me. Under the crushing weight of debt, my parents had no choice but to announce they'd sell the boat, the one that carried generations of our family's sweat and blood. I watched the despair on their faces, that unbearable future pressing down, and suddenly my voice was gone. I saw a flicker of complicated emotions in my parents' eyes, guilt, but also a trace of relief. Only my brother was furious, his sign language charged with hurricane-like intensity, each word hammering against my numb heart. He tore apart my self-righteous lies about sacrifice. Finally, I asked Mom the question that had haunted me for years. That fear of being different. It turned out we all carried it, just in opposite directions. The night of the concert arrived, watching my parents sitting in the audience, struggling to clap along but always half a beat behind. Their expressions lost and bewildered, I felt both moved and heartbroken. Then it was time for Miles and me to perform our duet. The stage lights fell, and in each other's eyes we found silent encouragement. The music flowed, our emotions intertwined, and for that moment, the world seemed to hold nothing but our voices. Some in the audience smiled, others quietly wiped away tears. Dad's expression was unreadable. In this moving world built of melodies, they remained forever shut out. After the concert, Teacher Wei was waiting outside. He praised my talent tirelessly to my parents, signing so enthusiastically I almost felt embarrassed.
Isn't that nice to meet you?
No.
Then he revealed he'd signed me up for a music audition the next day. I didn't translate that part. I knew it was impossible. But what I never expected was what happened later that night and asked me to sing for him at the docks when Dad suddenly pressed his hand in my throat when my Adam's apple trembled beneath his palm. He who had lived half a lifetime in silence heard for the first time the scorched fluttering of my wings. The humiliation, what truly stung my eyes, were 3 faces that appeared abruptly behind the second-floor railing. Mom discreetly wiping her temples, my brother staring intently with lips slightly moving, and Dad's hands, weathered by fishing nets now suspended mid-air, clumsily mimicking the shapes of my song. Unconsciously, I raised my arms. The melody crystallized at my fingertips into another language entirely. Those notes pierced the audition room's silence, flowing back to that simple kitchen on our little island. The judges' puzzled glances meant nothing. This song was born in the storm for my family, and now my soul had finally found its harbor. Later, Dad was no longer just the stubborn, shell-cloaked, deaf fisherman. He began awkwardly teaching new crew members how to haul nets. Mom stepped out and with clumsy sincerity found unexpected kindness in the community. Even my brother made friends at the local bar. Our family was growing new edges, awkward but unyielding, piercing through walls that once made us an island. When Berkeley's acceptance letter glowed on the screen, sunlight poured through the window as if timed. I set foot on the path called Chasing Dreams. My ship must leave the harbor, and then Dad's lips, with tremendous effort, ground out sound. The sounds stumbled forth, fractured like a first-time sailor tossed into a tempest, born broken from vocal cords sealed for decades.
Before love and understanding, the boundary between silence and sound has already dissolved like morning mist over the sea, and my symphony, it has only just begun.